Hi, this is Subratha and welcome to UPLR's Staffroom, where we discuss good practice and bring up questions for debate. Today we're going to be looking at what success criteria is and how to use it effectively. Have your cup of tea to hand, relax, and let's get started. Success criteria, quite simply, is a list of things that the children have to do in order for them to be successful at the end of the lesson. It's literally just a list that breaks down the small steps for them to achieve success. There are lots of benefits for using success criteria. First of all, the children know exactly what is expected of them. It's a very visual way of breaking down the small steps for how to get from where they are to be able to achieve success in meeting the learning objective at the end of the lesson. It helps children to be focused because if they know they've got all of these things that they have to do in the lesson, then they're less likely to get distracted by their peers. They're less likely to daydream and really laser in their focus on what it is that they have to do in that lesson because they know that they've got all of this that they need to meet and only a set amount of time that they have to be able to complete those tasks. If they have a checklist of things that they need to do, then it's a great way for children to be self-evaluating all the way throughout the lesson and not just to be given an opportunity right at the very end. When they self-evaluate throughout the lesson, then they're going to be correcting themselves more and they're going to be reflective of their own work as many times as they see fit, not just once at the very end. It makes marking so much easier because all you have to do is refer back to the checklist and say, okay, you need to make sure you need to do 2, 3 and 5, whereas I think you've done 1 and 4 really, really well. And this opens up opportunities for dialogue marking. There will be a separate video on dialogue marking later, but basically what dialogue marking is that it gives an opportunity for children to respond to your marking. So they can write a little comment about their thoughts on your comments and your feedback. And they can basically, it's an opportunity for them to express how they're feeling. Do they find it hard? It's a platform for them to express themselves, to say whether they're finding this topic difficult. It's a place where they can request more help from you if they think that that's what they need. And it's basically a place where you can have a conversation with your child and be aware of their needs because they can express their needs to you. And not least of all, just because Ofsted like it. Now, personally, I think the use of success criteria is a really important part of the lesson. It really sets the pace and, it helps your children get focused, which is why in all of the planning that I offer on my website, check out the description box below, that you will always see success criteria included along with lesson plans and resources, because I think success criteria is sometimes quite a long process to make sure you have that set up, but once you've got them written, then you can always refer back to them each year. And it's just really thinking hard about the small steps that can actually be the most time-consuming part of it. But once it's done, then you really do reap in the reward because it's just so much easier on the marking and things like that towards the end. So what does success criteria look like? Now, you can use many different formats. There is no one correct way of doing it. You can literally just write a bullet point list, print it out and give it to the kids. I really like the format that I used in the school I used to work at, because I just thought it was a really efficient way of doing it. So we're just going to switch over to my second camera here, which I think is peeking into the shot. Let me just correct that. Okay, so here we are on my other camera. Bear with me because it is a little bit shaky. And as you can see, the success criteria is in a table format. You've got the learning objective over here, and you've got the date. I like to leave the date blank because sometimes things happen and you can't always teach a particular lesson on the day that you originally planned to. Sometimes, lessons run over and things like that. So I like to leave the date blank, and so the children can just fill it in whenever they do it. And here you have all of the little small steps which the children need to know, so that they know, okay, they've got to be able to tick off all of these things to say that they have achieved success in the lesson. However, I like to differentiate between the things that they, as a teacher, I would like them to do, and the things that is a bonus. So if they get onto it, then this is the challenge. And then that's a really good way of ensuring challenge is in your lessons. And then in this part here, you've got a pupil section, and this is the bit that the children tick off. So if they feel that in this example, if they feel that they can identify simple, compound and complex sentences, then they just tick that off. And sometimes the children aren't aware. So let's say that they haven't really, for example here, they've improved sentences by adding subordinate clauses. Let's say they've done that really well, but they've not really done this bit really well. And let's say they tick that off, right? Because sometimes children don't always self-evaluate themselves correctly. So this bit here is where you then clarify whether they did that right or not. So you'd say, okay, tick, tick, you did these bits right. And then I could put 1 like this, okay, here. Or if you want to, I can have an arrow come down like that, and I can write a comment and I can say, make sure you use conjunctions like who in the middle of main clauses to add extra information. Okay, so this could be your comment. Now the child will then read this. That's your marking. That's your marking there, done. All you have to do is say, okay, refer back to this, and then I could just star that to say, okay, that could be your next step, and you can just initial that. Okay, let me just move that over. You could just initial that there to say that's your next step. So this is something that you want them to do, and try and use this challenge here, which is, make sure that they add who, for example. So you've kind of been a bit more specific there. And with this one, can they explain the difference? Maybe you could get them to write a little paragraph, and you could add that in the comments. So marking just becomes this really simple thing. You're not having to write huge amounts. You're not having to repeat yourself in your marking, especially when you're marking 30 pieces of work. That's so easily done. You could say, make sure you use who in the sentence. Who is a great conjunction, and you could be writing that 15 times when you're marking one set of 30. So this is a really great way of how success criteria can basically save you time in the long run when you're marking. Now then comes the dialogue marking part. So now you've got the pupil reply. So because the box is there and you've got the space for that to happen, the child can then write their own comment. So let's say, for example, the child writes who, but they feel that they need a little bit more help. They can say, here, I had a go. Please, can you help me in the next lesson? Or you could say, I think I might need a bit more help. Okay, so let's say the child writes this. So now that gives you a clear signal, a clear indicator where this child is needing of a little bit more support. So rather than falling through the net and the child feeling like they can't do something and, okay, let's just keep quiet and, just keep going and persevering. This is a really good way of how you can invite the children into a conversation with you so that at no point do they ever feel confused, and they feel that they've got different avenues in which to contact you by. So as teachers, I know it can be really difficult, especially when you've got 30 children in the classroom and a lot of them need your attention, and sometimes you've got behaviour things going on. Especially those quiet children, they might think to themselves, you know what, let's just leave the teacher to it. Clearly there's more demands on his or her time. And this is a good way, especially for those quiet, reserved kids, to have an avenue of communication with you. The more avenues of communication you open up with your kids, the better, I feel. So that's that. You can have the children stick these in at the start of every lesson, right at the top. So they're not, I particularly like how the learning objective is already in there, because then you're not wasting 5 minutes for them sitting there writing it down, especially for your slow writers. This is a really good way that, just have the glues ready. They just glue it in, stick it in, and it's done. Even if you spend 3 minutes gluing in the success criteria sheet for the lesson before as part of the tidy up time, it's just a massive time saver, and it then helps you free up time that you would otherwise be using writing date and title for actual lesson and learning time. Now, for success criteria to be really effective, you have to do several things. Now, your strength of teaching really is determined by the routines and the processes that you put in place. I cannot stress that enough. And this will be one of those things. Make sure that you are consistent and persistent with it. So every single day, make sure that when you're doing your planning, you have your success criteria typed up so that your TA can go make sure that they're cut up and prepared for every single lesson. And it can be quite a time-consuming and laborious task in the beginning. However, it will pay off in the long run simply because it just saves you so much time in marking, and you get huge benefits because the children have something to refer to during the lesson. Make sure that you get your children to stick it in at the start of the lesson, and don't be tempted to give it to them at the end or stick it in at the end as a self-evaluation at the end of the lesson, because it kind of defeats the purpose. So make sure at all times that you are rigorous about the fact that you get the learning objective success criteria sheet stuck in at the start of every lesson. Remind your children to use it constantly, because at the beginning it will be new, so the children will need training and practice on how to use it effectively. And at the start, you're going to have to keep reminding them. Eventually, with time, when they get more and more used to it, you won't have to prompt them as much, because with practice, they will learn how to refer to it automatically because they've done it so many times. But in the beginning, you're going to have to be on their case a little bit. You can also use it as part of peer assessment. You can say to the children, okay, pair up, let's see how your partner has met the success criteria. So sometimes when they're looking at their own work, it can be quite daunting. But when the children are looking at a friend's, then some of that pressure is kind of lifted off of them a little bit. And it gives them a space to discuss the success criteria and get really more comfortable with the concept. And finally, it gives them more responsibility. It enables them to be a lot more independent with their work. Now, I think especially if you are a Key Stage 2 teacher, it doesn't really matter which year group you're in. I think it's a great thing to put in place, no matter if you're year 3, 4, 5 or 6. For year 3 children, you can have some kind of a simplified version of the success criteria. Maybe limit yourself to about 2 or 3 small steps. And the fact that they can then use it as next steps, there's just so many advantages to using it, that really, if you follow all of those steps that you will see progress, I promise you. And don't we all know it that when we come to the dreaded pupil progress meeting, when we are talking about all the children's progress, it is another piece of evidence to say, look, here is what I've done to ensure the progress of each and every single child, and it kind of covers you a little bit as well. So now we've had a look at what success criteria is and how to use it effectively. If you are a newly qualified teacher, then you've probably heard of all of this before. If you didn't know what success criteria is, then I hope you found this video useful. And if you are an experienced teacher and you use success criteria all the time, then I hope that this video was a useful recap for you. Comment in the comments section below, let me know if you did find this video useful and whether, share your practices and any different ideas that you have on the use of success criteria in classrooms. Then I'd love to hear from you. Take care, have a great day, subscribe, comment, and until next time. Give this video a big thumbs up if you found it useful. Subscribe to my channel. You can stay up to date on all of the resources that I will be uploading onto this channel very soon. Check out my website, link is on the description box below. And here you'll be able to download planning resources, success criteria, everything that you need for great lessons, which will save you heaps of time. So make sure you check it out. Until then, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. I think I need to start somewhere. Let's start somewhere.